Hi guys, quick update here for YouTube. It's Saturday 20th of April. So we'll have a look at the stock market first, then we'll go on to crypto. If you want to join the group, everything's there. If you want to pay via crypto, just message me through the Facebook page. We are looking to get a part 2 to this course here. Ideally before the end of the year, if not early next year. It's been delayed by a couple of years now. And there are both mini and full versions of the masterclass. Just make sure you choose the right one. Like I said, if you want to pay via crypto, everything's there, and it's a discounted 3-month offer. Now, the stock market, we said at the start of the year, if you wanted to make money, it had to be in Q1. Obviously, we took great advantage of that with Nvidia et al. And now we were looking for a Q2 top. Now, it's a huge tax drain, which has come into the market here, 160 billion, which is the highest that I've seen for the last couple of years. And the question is the interim top in? Is that the yearly top in? And quite possibly it is, given how much damage is taking place here. Now, you can read this part of the count as an ABC. And then you can say this entire pattern since 2022, October that is over, right? Now, it should have gone a little bit higher, really, because we were looking for more 54 to 56. So I'm not, sort of ecstatic in calling this move over, but you see that the 545 there, the 1.618 extension, as well as that the 540. So you can see a lot of people were looking at the 540. Now, we did know at some point during Q2 it's going to top, but I don't like how it's such a big decline here, and a lot of the majors are really falling out of bed. So if this market is going to repair itself and make one more new high, because that's all we're saying, either the larger C wave is already in and we start a 6-month correction down, or there's one more new high, then we start a 6-month correction. So, but a lot of damage is taking place there, and we know that commercials are now fully hedged on their futures positioning. That's one of the major indicators that we look at twice a week in the group. So we've been very cautious here the last couple of weeks. We knew a turn was coming, and quite possibly the turn is already in. So there are two interpretations. One is already topped, and that is the yearly top in. And we start a 6 to 9 month correction very similar to this. Right? That's what we're going to start. A condensed, contracted version of this, which basically gets us down all the way to somewhere between 410 and 440, which is around the 50% Fibonacci. I mean, we might not go down that low. I think a move down to the 38 is very much possible. 448, we know this D leg now has to cross into the A leg, so 448, 427, at worst maybe 4,000. I don't see it going that low though, so I think assuming that the top is in, top to bottom, I don't know, 20% seems a bit unlikely, although it makes a good headline. So I would say somewhere between 448 and 410 on the SPY. And this will last about 6 months. This is exactly what we were forecasting. The only surprise factor is we've not gone high enough in terms of price. That's it. Should have gone a little bit higher, but you can't discount the velocity of this move. That is a deadly looking move there. And then, how do you make sense of this? Surely it's topped. Unless that's a C wave, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like I said, it needs to catch a bid here very, very soon, but it's safer to assume that the top is already in, and that now changes everything. So we've called this move perfectly. We knew a Q1 rally was coming, and now we knew a Q2 top. So assuming that the top is in, we're starting a 6 to 9 month correction, may only last 6 months, all the way into the US election. The other thing I don't really like is that you're really flattening out. You're flattening out this ending diagonal, because it should really have more of a better look to it. That doesn't. It should really look like this as opposed to this. But still, I suppose it works. It still works as an ending diagonal. So we're looking at that to come down here. One little back test of this line, which once again, interestingly, the line's also coming in at 4,500. So, somewhere between, 42 and 45 here on the SPY. False break of this line, get everyone bearish, absolutely convinced it's a big crash. Then one more new high, the last high, then this. Now, I did say eventually we're getting down to 6,670. The problem is, if the C wave is in, we're not going to get that high, because then the proportions of this, unless it's a really euphoric kind of bubble move, I suppose we could get that high. I would say the ending move now is closer to 6,000 than it is 6,670. But regardless, we don't think this is the start of a big crash. If this is, it's going to continue vertical next week and we'll be at 3,000 in no time, and then that's it, it's all over. So, but we don't think that's the case. We still feel that it's an ending diagonal. It's the only count which makes sense. So basically, there has to be one more move up. There has to be one more move after this one. So this is just another bear trap for those who like buying index funds. But obviously, something like Nvidia, it's going to pull back quite heavily. So if you want to know the targets for that, come and join the group. But I still feel longer term, that is, there's unbelievably still one more new high. This ultimately will be another bear trap. Post-US election, one more new high, then, we're going to have to call a top here, and then, it's time to call it a day, it's all over. So, that's the S&P. Assuming it's top, then 6 to 9 month correction. Now, I'm running everything as an ending diagonal, so you can just join these 2 points up now. Assuming we have our pivot, right, extend that line, and then you can extend this line. So, we have our pivot points here. Now, I'm not going to go off this. I'm not going to go off the pivot, even though I really should be going off the wick. I don't really want to tighten this up too much, right? I want to give us some more margin for error there. So let's just flatten it out a little bit. So once again, this was a 50% retracement of this, right? We have our lines. We think it's going to last until the US election. Well, the US election is here somewhere, November the 6th, I think it is. That gets you 337. So once again, you could say that the Qs as well, a lot of damage is taking place there. They're also going to start another one of these. Most people did not do well in this falling market, right? So obviously one has to look at that, right? Do you do better in a rising market than a falling market? I'd say 98% of people do better in a rising market. It's just a lot easier. So volatility is going to be here. Assuming the pivot is in, which we feel that it might very well be. Certainly the odds of it being in are very high now. If it's going to make one more new high, it has to be this week or next week. I don't think it's going to happen now. A lot of damage has taken place. A lot of those taxes have been paid off. And the entire move is over. We think from October 22 to now. That entire cycle is over. Now, this eventually will get down to 500. So it's another buy the dip if you want to look at it that way, except the dip is all the way the hell down here in about 6 months' time. So very rocky period. I think there's another bear trap though in about 6 months' time. Absolutely convinced it's going to do this. One more new high, and then it's definitely going to do this. Then you won't see the Qs ever again. Well, there won't be a world after that, so there's no point really talking about anything after that, is there really? Let's be honest. And the Dow Jones too. I mean, we kind of made this call 7 years ago. It was going to go 40k, and let's see. I mean, it's all an ending diagonal, all of it. It's all an ending diagonal, and the pattern is as of yet incomplete. Now, what does that mean for Bitcoin? Well, obviously there's a correlation across the board here between the SPY and Bitcoin, as we have known for many, many years, right? Bitcoin is simply a liquidity marker. Nothing else really matters for Bitcoin. It's not really important in any way, shape or form. Now, we can bring up a 5-day market here, just to show you, the way that these two markets are so correlated. Bitcoin kind of showed its hand first, S&P later. So we have to be careful with Bitcoin here, because if we're saying S&P could go down another 5-10%, then unfortunately one has to be of the opinion that Bitcoin as a minimum it's going to correct. Now, I do think eventually, just like the Qs will make one more new high, and the S&P one more new high, and the Dow one more new high, it's just that if the interim pivot, the medium-term swing trading pivot, potentially yearly top is in, then one has to say a larger correction is going to ensue until the US election, and then we take out the high. So I'm definitely of the opinion the high is not in, and I'm not for 1 second forecasting a move all the way down to 15k. But we're saying the S&P and the Q's pivot might be in, so at least a 6-month correction. Then what do you make of the count? Well, the count is a bit of a mess, isn't it? But just to assume right here, right now, before the end of this month, we're definitely going to do this, I don't think so now. I don't think that's possible. A lot of people are looking for 100k. I think eventually 100k is possible, but you might be waiting until 2025 for that. I think we are due a multi-month, I wouldn't say 2002 style correction, although it could be something like this, yes, because, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be that deep. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to go all the way down to 22k, and definitely I'm not calling for 15k. The only way 15k would be possible is if one was absolutely convinced the super cycle, the grand super cycle is over, and that's a very big call to make. This is ridiculous to make that call, absolutely ridiculous. You cannot, as of yet, make that call. This 6-year ending diagonal, which it will turn out to be a near 6-year ending diagonal, is not over just yet. However, a large 6 to 9 month correction is very much possible. Right, anyway, let's get back onto Bitcoin then. So what does that mean then? Right, so what we're trying to say is, let's just summarize, we don't think this is going to happen. At the same time, we don't think an imminent move to 100k is possible. We're saying eventually it will go 100k. So how do you not take out 15k, eventually make out 100k, but not right now in 2025? Well, we're in April. So that is going to mean a multi-month correction. This could be the start of something like this. Now, what pattern does that make? Well, it's difficult to know at this time. I mean, the count from here has, you know, there are various interpretations. You try to convert it to a line chart to make some sense of it, and it's not really any clearer. All we can say is some kind of A or W, some kind of B, and some kind of C. Now, it could easily be a WXY, but some kind of completed three-wave pattern is over. Now we have to correct all of this. So now let's go on the futures then. Once again, this is all assuming that the S&P top is in, which is more likely. A lot of people are running this as a way forward, but it's too obvious. When everyone's calling for the same thing, chances are it's just because they got in too late and they're trying to justify that position by getting bullish. But that's not really how the stock market works. I mean, once again, you know, there's not much volume up here, is there? There's no volume up here. So, you know, if we're saying, right, Qs are going to go down to 350, let's say that the top is in. The interim swing trading yearly top is in. Right? So S&P, let's say 4,200. Let's say Qs 350. Well, let's say 350 on the Qs. Let's say Nvidia, much lower than it is right now. A lot of people joined that party too late. A huge correction in Nvidia's coming. I mean, you know, we're not going to cover it here. You know, we think Bitcoin is correlated. It's a liquidity marker. We think inflation's going to go up. Geopolitical XYZ. It's not really helping the situation. Obviously, that's the effect and not the cause. The market was going to correct regardless. We know Bitcoin has a much higher beta. If the S&P moves 10%, Qs are going to move 15% easily, and the Bitcoin over it is going to move more like 20-25%. It's much higher volatility. So, is it beyond the realms of possibility at some point this year we see 23 to 40k Bitcoin? Well, obviously, yes. And like I said, even if the S&P top is not in, let's say it does this, one more new high, then we get a correction. So the bulk of this move is over. And I think once it gets down into here, which is the value area high and the VPOC, right, there's a lot of volume going on down here, then we can reassess. And don't even ask me how you would count this then, because this is a mess. This is just a mess. You know, Elliott Wave is beginning to, I mean, it still works, obviously, but on Bitcoin, a lot of it is just hype cycles, bull markets and bear markets. And so you just have to take each individual wave and split it up. I've tried to connect the dots between these waves, and since, you know, a lot of this doesn't make any sense on the long-term scale. It's just bull market and bear market. It doesn't. You're finding it really difficult to connect the dots. But I don't believe that 72k high up there, I don't believe that is the actual top. I think 2025, once this market goes back into bull mode, it should be able to take out that high. The problem is, you know, Bitcoin can go into very long, complex mess in terms of its correction. So it can get really messy up here. This is the thing with Bitcoin. I mean, it moves up 100% in a day, then it'll correct 20% of the space of 6 months. So unfortunately, when Bitcoin's in a bear market, it can get very, very messy. The only real question for most people to ask, if not every individual listening to these words right now, are you of the opinion one more new high is coming, then a multi-month correction? Or are you of the opinion we're already in a multi-month correction? Knowing what we know about Bitcoin and the fact that it tops first, I would say the S&P and Nasdaq, they don't look very good, right? So we can't just always assume it's an ABC. And then, the YouTube sub will be thinking, well, mate, how do you count this then? Well, I would then count it as that being a wave 5 truncation. Some kind of 1-2 has formed somewhere up in here, and it's wave 5. And this is 5 waves, not off a C leg, but off the start of a multi-month correction. Yeah. So that's the problem. It's very much S&P, Nasdaq related. Obviously, we cover all of this. We have gone defensive here for the last couple of weeks. I mean, you can't tell me that looks good. That doesn't look good. I'm not saying that's the all-time top. I still have a good feeling eventually Nvidia will take out that high. But once again, it's a near 100% correlation with the S&P. So you're really contradicting yourself if you've got a bullish one more new high on the S&P and Nvidia, and at the same time you're bearish Bitcoin and vice versa. That's a near 100% correlation. So really, either you're bullish everything or you're bearish everything. It's very hard. Notice Bitcoin always tops first. Notice that. Yeah? So let's just bring up the Bitcoin there. Bitcoin is the one in blue, obviously. So at the end of the day, this is just the way the market's moving. There's no more sideways, either massively up or massively down, and it occurs so quickly due to the options and the gamma situations that you really have to catch on early. Otherwise, you could be in an incredibly unfavorable position, plus or minus giving profits back. I mean, we've been looking at this educationally, of course, on Nvidia specifically, because we've got multiple group members up multiple 6 figures on this move, and we said weeks ago the bulk of the move is over, right? Doesn't mean it's over long term, but it's not about the long term, is it? It's about taking advantage of the verticality of the move. Most amount of money, shortest amount of time. Right now, that is just retail traders who have bought the top, who have purchased here. That's just retail, that, by the way, and that's basically smart money selling into that retail flow. They bought on the GTC conference and they're panic selling here. Yes, eventually Nvidia is going to make a new high, but if the S&P goes down to like 42, and let's say this is the Nasdaq, which it isn't, obviously, this is more Bitcoin, obviously. Nasdaq goes to 350. This could easily happen, but then US election, bomb, we're going to do this, one more new high. So the actual top is not in. The actual top. I'm talking about the actual tippity grand super cycle prior to a 90% correction crash, the biggest crash of all time. That's not in. However, it is very much possible that the high is in. The interim swing trading yearly top high is in, and so much damage is taking place here. And I've been around long enough to know that amount of volume, that is just retail panicking, retail unfavorable buying, and more importantly, smart money getting out of the way and selling into that strength. It's not that easy to repair a chart like that on Nvidia. A lot of damage has taken place here. So that is the update, basically. Either you're bearish already and you're cautious, as you should be, right? Because you lose money on the entry, not on the exit, and you shave into that strength. That's how you make money here. Or you're one more new high, then you're bearish. The problem with one more new high is, what if it never comes? What if that one more new high and all we get is a fake pump? Don't get me wrong, they might chuck in a fake pump next week. I wouldn't be surprised. But always assuming one more new high is coming straight away, it might not happen. The high might already be in. Next thing you know, you're down here. And obviously, people likely bought in the top recently. I would say the last 8 weeks or so, a lot of people have bought in here across the board. Because we know retail traders are the most long on the futures than they've been in years, based on the data that I have. And even though there's a small lag to that data, it's still relevant. and smart money is fully hedged. They're fully hedged negative, they are now negative now. They are now net short overall on their futures, meaning if this goes to zero, they're going to make a lot of money. Not that it will. So you have to be careful here. Always assuming one more year. Let's take Solana. We bought this at 4, bought this at 20. Obviously, we sold a bit at 25. That is a big correction. That is a really big correction. Why should we always assume straight away? I'm not saying it can't happen, but it would be a contradiction of terms for this to happen now. Let's say in the next 6 weeks. That's what everyone's saying, right? Everyone is saying this wave is still ongoing. Yeah, and definitely, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we get that. But all I'm saying is this might consolidate a little bit longer than people think, okay? And that isn't necessarily the only count. You could still say some kind of A is in. Now we're correcting all of this. So unfortunately, all of these markets are in some way connected. There might be the occasional altcoin that does a 10x randomly. But unfortunately, all of these markets are correlated, right? Bitcoin is a liquidity market. Crypto in general is. And linked to that Nasdaq, and then Nasdaq leads the S&P. S&P then leads the earnings situation for these companies, and then that then leads the economy. So that's the way it's all correlated, right? You can't say Nvidia is coming down, S&P is coming down, Bitcoin's coming down, Qs are coming down, and then Solana's coming up. The count has to be the same effectively on all of them. And the problem with being bullish is, let's just say you take the Qs, let's say. That is a lot of damage right there, right? That is damage on the weekly and the monthly, and because we're in a new month, in a new 3-month cycle, right? Look what happened in 2022, right? Look what happened there. It looks quite similar, doesn't it? And this is what we're saying. We could easily be in for one of these over the next 6 months. Obviously, a more condensed version, right? And then, as we're just repeating ourselves there, that can get you down to 337, right? And then wouldn't that be a great buying opportunity? Now, what would that correlate with Nvidia? I don't know, 400, 500 again? Unfortunately, the way the market is, this market has been running on hot air since January, really, and I've seen it. I just knew there was going to be one little trap. And now, unfortunately, the trap's over. And as a minimum, the S&P is getting to the yearly open as an absolute minimum. There's no way this candle is going to remain green for very much longer. That is just a failed breakout. That is just a complete deviation above that level. Swing, failure, shakeout pattern. That is the yearly. As a minimum, we're going to go there. Frankly, this might not stop until we get to the early open, S-curve it. Then we'll get one of these. Then eventually it'll just roll over in a very complicated mess. Okay, so just watch out for that. Never a good idea to always assume one more new high. Just like it's never a good idea to always assume one more new low. Like people were saying, we said no, we're gonna go all the way. So yes, it's not gone high enough. I completely accept that. For those who have been watching me for a long time here, listening to my words. It's not gone high enough. However, you have to react to the changing environment. Hell of a lot of volume there. Hell of a lot of retail panicking due to unfavorable location of their buys, and a heavy amount of smart money selling into that strength. And they never sell the top. They always sell on the way to the top. So difficult right now. Difficult. I would say it's higher probability than not that the highs are already in. The interim swing trading high is in. If it's not in, one more new high. So difficult here on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's going to consolidate now for quite some time. I'm not interested in the halving having any relevance to any of that. Let's just have a look on the. It is a Saturday today, so let's just pull up on Coinbase. Yeah, it's difficult. Yes, it looks like a flat. Of course it does. That looks like a continuation pattern. But when is a bull flag not a bull flag? Ask yourself that. Right? And usually it's when it's gone on long enough and it's not showing enough volume. This already for weeks has now not been looking like a bull flag to me. So we have to be careful here. Even now it's a good, some people, those in the group have been offloading this for weeks because you sell into that strength. You never sell the top. It doesn't make any sense. From a risk-reward perspective, the dynamic risk and reward looks like this. The nominal curve always looks like this. But as you get closer and closer to the top, there's less and less gain. So a professional is seeing a curve like this, whereas a retail trader, they're only interested in the nominal value. 2 to 4 is 50%, 4 to 6 is 50%, 6 to 8 is what? 33%, 8 to 10 is 25%. So that's why the real curve, the dynamic curve, looks like this. And obviously the gradient or the tangent is the money that you're making, right? So unfortunately, Bitcoin, and for weeks now, even Nvidia, I've been saying it for weeks on the group, every single video, twice a week. The bulk of the money is made here. Very difficult market. Inflation is going to go up. Geopolitical XYZ is obviously kicking off right now and will be for the next 6 months from a political standpoint anyway. There's very little money to be made. I don't think converting this to a percentage helps, although for some people that might help, but I think that's just more confusing. I mean, I don't think there's any easy way to explain what I'm saying about dynamic risk and reward other than just looking at the simple maths. I've increased 2, 4, 6, 8. They're increasing by $2 every time, but the percentage that I'm making in between is less and less. Is that really a way forward? How many people have this count? Well, if everyone's got the same count, chances are that is probably not correct. I don't know. I would be careful. I think Bitcoin has not topped, though. Longer term, I don't think it's topped. I think 100k is definitely possible. I don't like the fact that we're failing at the new highs, but a pullback eventually to this kind of level is very much possible. Get the S&P down, get the Qs down, get Nvidia way less than 600 than where it is right now. I mean, what's it at? Get a good little shakeout, little shakeout in there. Do something like this do something like that. I mean, it could even fill the gap. We were buying in at 400 and 400 here and then selling off into that. That's all you need to make money. 20 to 30, 40%, and then get out of the way. Because if you don't get out of the way, it ends up coming back down to your entry. Then you've wasted 6 months of your life for nothing. You've just broken even. You're better off in a savings account. Yeah, I don't like the look of these charts. I think it's more likely that the top is in. It would be safer to go with that play and sit back and wait for the lows and then one more new high, and then we're going to have to call a real top.